I have worked all my life as an actor. Spent years and years in the business. And I can't explain this. And so my experience gives me no answer. I can't put it down to anything but just an incredible phenomenon.
At 94, William Shatner stands as one of Hollywood's most recognizable legends, a man who seemed almost unstoppable for decades. From conquering television history to redefining pop culture, his energy always felt timeless. But behind the confidence, humor, and iconic voice lies a deeply personal struggle that changed his life forever. A devastating diagnosis forced Shatner to confront something he could not outrun, outact, or ignore. In this video, we look beyond the fame to explore how that diagnosis reshaped his daily life, challenged his spirit, and revealed a side of William Shatner the world rarely gets to see. William Shatner's private life has unfolded with the same intensity and complexity that defined his legendary career. Behind the confident public image lay a man whose journey through love, loss, and resilience had shaped him just as deeply as fame ever would. Over the decades, Shatner married 4 times, with each relationship leaving its own lasting imprint on his story. His first marriage began in 1956 with Canadian actress Gloria Rand, at a time when his career was still in its early stages of establishment. Together, they welcomed 3 daughters, building a family during years filled with ambition and uncertainty. Yet, as professional demands grew, personal distances followed, and the marriage came to an end in 1969. A quiet but painful closing of an important chapter. In 1973, Shatner married Marcy Lafferty, the daughter of television producer Perry Lafferty. This relationship endured for more than 2 decades, becoming the longest marriage of his life. Though it eventually ended in divorce in 1996, the separation was marked by mutual respect rather than bitterness. Their ability to remain on good terms spoke to a shared maturity and a recognition of what they had once meant to each other. The most heartbreaking chapter came soon after. In 1997, Shatner married Noreen Kidd, a relationship that brought him great happiness, but also profound sorrow. In 1999, Kidd was tragically found in the swimming pool of their home, a loss that shattered Shatner's world. He later reflected on this devastating period in his memoir, writing with raw honesty about grief, guilt, and the enduring ache of sudden absence. It was a moment that forever altered his emotional landscape. Love found him once more in 2001 with Elizabeth Martin. Their marriage lasted nearly 2 decades before ending in 2020. Even after their divorce, Shatner spoke warmly of her, often choosing to remember the laughter, companionship, and shared moments rather than the ending itself, a testament to his reflective outlook on love. Beyond marriage, Shatner found solace in quieter passions. His lifelong devotion to horses became a steady refuge, offering peace away from public scrutiny. Breeding and showing horses gave him balance and purpose, a grounding presence amid personal turbulence. In many ways, these moments of stillness helped him endure the storms of his private life, reminding him that even after loss, life continues, softer, wiser, and deeply reflective. William Shatner's resilience has never been a quiet strength. It has been forged through fear, uncertainty, and repeated confrontations with his own mortality. In the early 2000s, he endured a deeply unsettling health scare when doctors told him he had prostate cancer. For a time, that diagnosis forced him to stare directly at the fragility of life, weighing regrets, unfinished dreams, and the possibility of an ending he wasn't ready to face. Although further testing later revealed the diagnosis was incorrect, the emotional toll lingered. The experience left scars of anxiety and reflection, reminding him how suddenly certainty can vanish. Years later, life tested him again. A diagnosis of melanoma, a dangerous and unpredictable form of skin cancer, introduced a new chapter filled with genuine risk and unanswered questions. Unlike the earlier scare, this battle was real, heavy, and ongoing. It demanded endurance, not just physically, but emotionally, an acceptance that even icons are not immune to time's quiet cruelty. The weight of age, loss, and survival pressed harder than ever. Yet even in this struggle, Shatner refused to surrender to despair. In interviews, his voice often conveys both weariness and gratitude, reflecting someone who has lived long enough to know how easily everything can be taken away. He reflects on his career not with arrogance, but with wonder, on the stories told, the adventures lived, and the countless lives touched along the way. There is nostalgia in his words, a sense of looking back from a hard-earned vantage point, aware that every moment now carries added meaning. Shatner's strength lies not in denying fear, but in living alongside it. His reflections reveal a man who has stumbled, endured, and continued forward anyway, choosing appreciation over bitterness, memory over regret. Even as his body falters, his spirit remains restless, determined to find light in the shadow of struggle and to honor a life fully lived, scars and all. William Shatner's later years have been marked not only by reflection, but by quiet, persistent physical struggles that serve as constant reminders of time's toll. One of the most enduring challenges has been tinnitus, a relentless hearing condition that fills silence with an uninvited, unending noise. Researchers have long linked tinnitus to exposure to extreme sound, and Shatner believes his own condition traces back to a moment frozen in Hollywood history, a pyrotechnic mishap during the filming of the 1967 Star Trek episode Arena. What was meant to be a cinematic spectacle became a lifelong consequence, a hidden cost of the work that made him famous. Living with tinnitus was not simply an inconvenience. It was disorienting and exhausting, a struggle that followed him long after the cameras stopped rolling. Relief did not come easily. Over time, he turned to habituation therapy, wearing an earpiece that released a gentle layer of white noise. Rather than silencing the condition, it trained his mind to push the ringing into the background, a quiet act of endurance rather than a cure. Through this experience, Shatner became an advocate for others suffering the same invisible battle, lending his voice to support tinnitus awareness and research, determined that others might feel less alone than he once did. As the years advanced, new discomforts emerged. By 2020, Shatner openly spoke about swollen joints and the accumulating aches that arrive with age, the kind that linger in the background of every movement. These pains, though less dramatic than sudden tragedy, carried their own weight, daily reminders that even extraordinary lives are bound by ordinary human limits. To manage the discomfort, he turned to cannabidiol oil, seeking small measures of relief where he could find them. Taken together, these struggles reveal a man still standing but not untouched. There is nostalgia in his reflections, a sense of looking back on a body that once leapt into action without consequence. There is tragedy, too, in the slow erosion of comfort and ease. Yet above all, there is perseverance, an aging icon learning to coexist with pain, adapting rather than retreating and continuing forward with a weary, hard-earned grace. In the later stages of his public life, William Shatner found himself entangled in a series of modern controversies that reflected the growing divide between generations, language, and online culture. In 2017, a message he shared online expressing support for Autism Speaks sparked immediate backlash. Many autism self-advocates viewed the organization as deeply problematic, and what followed was not a quiet exchange but days of heated online disputes. Shatner clashed openly with autistic individuals and their allies, at times referencing unreliable sources, which only intensified the criticism. What may have begun as an attempt to show support quickly unraveled into confusion and frustration. Eventually, he suggested the situation had been blown out of proportion, later describing it as a misunderstanding. Yet the damage to trust lingered. The pattern repeated in 2020 when Shatner spent weeks arguing online over being labeled a straight white cis man. What seemed like a semantic disagreement grew into another prolonged public standoff, highlighting how deeply uncomfortable he appeared with the evolving language of identity. To many observers, these moments felt less like malice and more like a man struggling to reconcile his worldview with a rapidly changing cultural landscape. In 2021, another incident drew attention when he appeared dismissive toward a Jewish convert of color. Commentators noted similarities to his earlier online conflicts, suggesting a recurring inability, or unwillingness, to fully engage with perspectives shaped by different lived experiences. The tone of these exchanges carried a sense of defensiveness rather than reflection, adding to the growing sense of disconnect. Then came a quiet revelation in 2023. Actor Brent Spiner shared that Shatner had confided that his social media account was largely handled by an employee, with minimal direct involvement from him. This disclosure casts earlier controversies in a new, more somber light, raising questions about authorship, intent, and how much of the outrage had been fueled by a digital voice no longer fully his own. In retrospect, these episodes feel less like deliberate provocation and more like tragic misunderstandings, shaped by distance, delegation, and the uneasy collision between legacy and the modern age. William Shatner's acting career is one of the most enduring and unpredictable journeys in entertainment history, a path marked by early prestige, pop culture immortality, reinvention, and surprising longevity. Trained in classical theater in Canada, Shatner began his career in the 1950s with Shakespearean stage productions, earning a reputation as a serious and disciplined actor long before fame found him. His early film work showcased that dramatic foundation. Appearances in The Brothers Karamazov, 1958, alongside Yul Brynner, and Judgment at Nuremberg, 1961, placed him in critically acclaimed projects that explored moral complexity and human conflict. In Judgment at Nuremberg, Shatner's restrained performance as a troubled witness proved he could hold his own in prestigious, dialogue-driven cinema. Television soon became his true proving ground. Throughout the early 1960s, Shatner appeared in numerous anthology series such as The Twilight Zone, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and The Outer Limits, often portraying men pushed to psychological extremes. One of his most memorable early TV roles came in the Twilight Zone episode, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, where his escalating terror became one of the show's most iconic performances. Everything changed in 1966, when Shatner was cast as Captain James T. Kirk in Star Trek. What began as a short-lived science fiction series evolved into a global phenomenon. Shatner's Kirk, bold, impulsive, philosophical, and deeply human, became the emotional core of the franchise. His performance helped redefine the television hero and transformed science fiction into a platform for exploring ethics, leadership, and social issues. He reprised the role in 7 Star Trek feature films between 1979 and 1994, guiding the character from youthful command to reflective sacrifice in Star Trek: Generations. Rather than remaining frozen in that identity, Shatner reinvented himself yet again. In the 1980s, he embraced self-aware humor while starring as the relentless attorney in T.J. Hooker. Later, he stunned audiences with his Emmy-winning role as the eccentric, sharp-tongued lawyer Denny Crane on The Practice and Boston Legal. The performance blended comedy, drama, and vulnerability, earning Shatner widespread critical praise and introducing him to an entirely new generation. From classical theater to cult television, blockbuster films to award-winning late-career television, William Shatner's acting career is defined not by a single role, but by resilience, reinvention, and an unmistakable screen presence that continues to endure. For William Shatner, the idea of space was never confined to fiction. Long after Star Trek transformed him into a symbol of humanity's cosmic curiosity, that imagined frontier found echoes in the real world. Beginning with the Apollo 15 era, NASA developed a tradition of waking astronauts with meaningful music and spoken word. On March 7, 2011, that ritual took on poetic weight when the crew of Space Shuttle Discovery spent their final morning docked at the International Space Station, listening to Alexander Courage's iconic Star Trek theme. Over it played Shatner's voice, reimagining the famous monologue, not about a starship, but about Discovery itself and its 3-decade mission of science, cooperation, and daring exploration. Fiction and reality briefly merged, underscoring how deeply Shatner's legacy had become woven into humanity's spacefaring dreams. A decade later, that symbolic connection turned profoundly personal. In October 2021, at the age of 90, Shatner finally crossed the threshold he had spent a lifetime portraying. Invited by Jeff Bezos, he joined Blue Origin's suborbital flight, lifting off from the Texas desert aboard a New Shepard capsule. The journey was brief, but its emotional impact was overwhelming. Upon returning to Earth, Shatner spoke not with triumph, but with quiet awe and sorrow. He described seeing Earth wrapped in an impossibly thin veil of blue, fragile, luminous, and alone, set against the vast darkness beyond. Space, he said, felt not alive, but empty, a stark reminder of how precious and vulnerable life truly is. Though his record as the oldest person to reach space would later be surpassed, the moment itself remained uniquely his. It was not about age or achievement, but perspective. In his private life, Shatner has often maintained distance from his own image. He has admitted that he rarely watches his performances, leaving many Star Trek episodes unseen, and revisiting a few of his films. That reluctance hints at a man forever moving forward, carrying nostalgia quietly, aware that the myth surrounding him often feels larger than the man himself. In the end, Shatner's relationship with space, imagined and real, stands as a meditation on time, legacy, and the fragile beauty of the world we call home.